Hi you guys, it's Amanda with Healthy House on the Block, and I'm here with our weekly video and tip on creating an indoor space that truly supports your health and your wellness. This week we're going to be talking about EMFs, electromagnetic radiation, and we're going to talk about some very simple ways that you can avoid this sort of toxin and this sort of stressor on your body at home. We're going to talk about ways that are not going to cut you off from technology. I like to take a very practical approach, and I like to remember that we are still living in a modern age where we all use the internet, we all use electricity, and so we have to find ways to protect ourselves while using these things. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The biggest thing that you can do in your home is create an area that you sleep in that is as free from these sort of stressors and this toxin as possible. And that is one of the big things that we're going to cover today. So let's get started.
I mean, it can be so great living in a connected world. Growing up, I can remember my dad telling me how one day we'll just carry little computers in our pockets and we won't even need these big computers at our desks. I could honestly hardly imagine this, and yet really here we are with the world at our fingertips and electronics surrounding us in many aspects, if not most aspects of our life. But that also means EMF radiation is surrounding us. So this might not seem like a bad thing. If EMF radiation is around us all the time, really what harm could it be doing? The truth is that yes, we are negatively impacted by electromagnetic radiation, and yes, that all comes from electronics and devices around our home specifically. But the great news is we can actually just be much more intentional about how we use electronics in our home space. I'm very aware that our electronics make our life easier. And to be honest, it's pretty cool how they help us learn and grow. As someone who started life without many of these electronic devices, and as I grew, I watched them enter the world and change life for everyone. It's something that I don't want to give up necessarily, but I do think there are way smarter ways of using technology to help support our body's wellness, which is exactly what this video is all about. So what is EMF radiation? The simplest way to describe electric and magnetic fields in your home is that they are areas of energy that surround any electrical device. This can range from your household appliances to your hair dryer, from power lines to wiring within our home. Essentially, if it is an electrical component or has an electrical component, it will have an EMF at some level. So sometimes it's referred to as an electric and magnetic disturbance traveling through space. And so obviously this is a component of our world that we can't see, and most of us probably can't feel it either. So if there's one thing that I could tell you about EMFs, it's that proximity matters. EMF radiation is strongest closer to the electronic item. The farther away, the less EMF radiation occurs. And if you're far enough away, it likely won't affect you at all. And so when we talk about the importance of reducing EMF exposure at home, it really boils down to how close you are to some of the items we're going to talk about and for how long. You might think of the biggest issue, your phone. So yes, this is a big one. So many of us keep our phones on us throughout the day. But another big place to look around is your bed. You've heard me say this about other toxins too. Toxins where you sleep can be one of the most burdening things on our bodies. The length of time we spend there allows us to be near toxins for very long periods of time, on top of which our sleep is supposed to be restful and restorative and really free from toxins. So there actually is science linking electronics to your health and wellness. they are affecting our body in a variety of ways. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is biological effects. There was a controlled study done that showed EMF, radiation, and cell phones specifically can actually reduce the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. And because the blood-brain barrier restricts the entry of inflammatory toxins into the tissue, we do not want to compromise the permeability of this barrier. There was another study done that showed the blood-brain barrier permeability also contributed to nerve cell damage and damage to neurons due to mobile phone exposure, as well as microwave exposure. Smartphones have recently been linked to reduced cognitive skills, as well as negative emotional impacts and anxiety and physiology distraction. So another study that was done linked cell phones being used while pregnant to child hyperactivity and behavior problems after they are born. This same study also points to a trend of increasing risk of children's behavior problems since they finished the study. So this is a growing problem. Another thing that we're concerned about is our eyes and what blue light does to our eyes and also what it does to our hormones. So many electronics with screens give off a blue tinted light. This blue tinted light is not only impacting our eyes, but again, also negatively affecting the production of melatonin in the body. One study done asked participants with insomnia to use amber lenses to block the blue light from their eyes for about 2 hours prior to bedtime. And oddly enough, their insomnia symptoms were almost completely improved after these 2 weeks. So blue light has also been linked to macular degeneration, impaired vision, retinal damage, and developing myopia. Another study showed that morning and evening blue light exposure alters the metabolic function in normal weight adults. And what it does is it lowers their metabolism and raises their glucose peak value during these exposure times. And then the last thing that's very important is studying what has been an impact of microwaves. So numerous studies have been done on the negative health impacts that microwaves have on our bodies, and they've been doing them for a very long time. A lot of the studies done point to degeneration of some type of system within the body. Specifically, microwaves have been linked to degeneration of the internal cellular membrane, nervous impulses within the brain's cerebrum, loss of energy in the nerve centers, interruption of hormone production, and degeneration of the blood and lymph. And children actually absorb even more radiation from microwaves than adults do. And so all the studies that I just shared are linked in this week's blog post if you would like to look at those further. But there are also very specific ways that your health is suffering due to EMF radiation. So there's actually an increased risk of cancer and tumors. The United States National Toxicology Program found cell phone radiation exposure of 9 hours per day was linked to heart cancer. Another study showed that women who put their cell phone in their bra or over their breast had an increased risk of breast cancer incidence and tumors. A 2020 study done showed that high power Wi-Fi exposure from just 1 hour a day to 7 hours a day decreased sperm count. And another study showed that even low frequency EMF exposure from monitors or computers and phones decreased sperm mobility. And then another study linked cell phone use while pregnant for more than 30 minutes per day to a negative impact on fetal growth in some women. And because EMFs and radio frequency radiation, which is RFR, drastically decreases the amount of melatonin produced, cell phone exposure has been linked to not only sleep disturbances, but it has also been linked to anxiety when radiation was on. Another study showed that the exposure to EMFs, vibrations, and ringtones created an anxiety-like response. So the EMF exposure produced oxidative stress in this study when cell phones were turned on compared to turned off. And then one final study that I'm sharing linked EMF exposure to a change in behavior and an increased risk of the stress hormones in our body. And then finally, a comparative study performed shows that low-level exposures of EMFs or exposure to even weak EMFs disrupt the pineal gland's production of melatonin in the body. Just like we've been talking about this whole time, the pineal gland actually senses EMF as light. And because this decreases the production of melatonin, you're having trouble sleeping. When melatonin levels are low, the body has a more difficult time falling asleep as well as staying asleep. And it's these sleep disturbances that can lead to long-term health effects in humans. So the good news is there are so many easy changes you can make, honestly, even today, to start improving your health and wellness in your home space when it comes to EMF radiation and exposure. These 10 ideas are so simple. You can do these today. So first, put down your cell phone. This is probably going to be one of the most impactful changes you can make. Make a habit to put your cell phone down when you're at home. Give it a home on your countertop or somewhere out of reach so that you aren't tempted to pick it up. Not only is this great for your body, but it can also be great if you're working on being more present without distractions at home. Second, keep electronics out of your bedroom. This is a super impactful change, and it's keeping all electronics out of your bedroom, especially your kids' bedrooms. If nothing else, get your cell phone charger out of your sleep space if possible. And again, one thing to keep in mind is that some electronics EMF exposure drops off relatively quickly the farther away you move from the device. So for example, I tested our Medify air purifier, which we keep in all our bedrooms. And while it gave off high levels of EMFs nearby, about 2 feet away, there was almost nothing detected. So this means the farther away from your bed you can get electronics, the healthier it is for you. So the third idea is to get a red nightlight. We know that blue light is terrible for our sleep and our eyes. So one of the best changes we made for our kids was to get red nightlights. I personally love Himalayan salt lamps, and I have one linked in this week's blog post that you can actually plug in as a bathroom nightlight. The fourth idea is to turn off your router at night. So if you can turn it off completely at night, this is great. It can really give your body a huge break from EMF radiation and exposure. A solid 8 hours where you can completely be free from most EMFs can be just what your body needs to reset. Fifth is avoid wearables. They're the worst way to expose yourself to EMF radiation because the devices are directly on your skin and obviously very close to your body. If you can avoid smartwatches, fitness trackers, you'll be doing your body a really big favor. If you have a baby monitor, I would suggest moving it. I know that these can be one of the worst sources of EMF radiation exposure, and the further away from the crib your monitor camera is, the better for your baby and for your baby's brain. And then the farther away from your bed the actual monitor is, the better for you. Make it a habit to keep these devices as far from sleeping areas as possible. So 7 is don't use smart home devices. Any device that connects to your Wi-Fi and also has Bluetooth in order to connect to your phone is a huge source of EMFs. If you can avoid these devices, please do, or at the very least, just limit them within your home. This can range from smart light bulbs to speakers and smart home devices with screens. Number 8 is choose to read a book instead of scrolling your phone before bed. This is one of the best habit changes my husband and I made, and that was to read before bed with a soft glow book light instead of scrolling our phones. Some people choose to use red lights while they read. It has impacted my sleep so positively to have a low natural light and a book in my hand before sleeping instead of the blue light on my phone. 9 is use airplane mode. So when your phone is on you or near you, go ahead and turn it to airplane mode. It's not going to reduce all EMF exposure, but it will reduce a large amount. It's a great habit to get into if you don't need your phone, but need to carry it with you wherever you're going. And then finally, turn it off when not in use. So anytime any electronics are not being used, go ahead and turn them off. Most electronics won't emit any sort of EMF exposure when they're turned off. And so making it a habit to turn off items when you're not using them and save yourself from the exposure to EMF radiation is a great idea. There's also some really big ways that you can reduce EMF exposure that might take a little more time and intention on your part, but they are worth it. So instead of using Wi-Fi at home, you can hardwire your internet. A new trend right now is to completely hardwire your home rather than utilize Wi-Fi. And even if you have a home that is already built, you can retroactively do this, or at least do it to some of the electronics in your home. Computers are the big one, and so are televisions. Having them hardwired with Ethernet cable or Cat5 is going to reduce the use of Wi-Fi in your space. Another idea is to invest in air tube headsets. So AirPods and Bluetooth headsets are another way that you expose yourself to electromagnetic radiation in the worst way. But many of us don't really have the option of hardwiring our headphones to our phone anymore. So using something similar to the air tube reduces the magnetic part of the energy because they are metal free. They're not perfect, but it does offer a reduced level of EMF exposure compared to the standard headphones that are on the market. So if you have dimmer switches in your home, they produce high levels of EMS because they alter the amount of electric current being sent to your light bulbs. This type of dirty electricity is notorious for high levels of EMF radiation and really should not be used in homes at all. And I would encourage you to get rid of them in your home. So you can also try a filter for electronics to reduce EMF exposure. I like to recommend green wave filters. These filters are designed to reduce the amount of dirty electricity that is present in your home. The technology it uses simply filters out the electricity that is within your home's wiring that causes EMF radiation through the variance in alternating and direct current. You can shop their filters on my website and get one for just one room or enough for your whole house. So an easy swap for your kitchen is to use a toaster oven rather than a microwave. This is much safer and healthier, and it's a great way to heat up your food. And chances are once you make the switch, it won't take long before you've changed all your habits and you don't even miss your microwave anymore. And then finally, if you're in the market for a new stove, a plain old electric stove is going to be a much better option than an induction stove. An induction stove gives off high levels of EMF while in use and even while not being used. So if you do have an induction stove, just make sure that you don't have a bed on a shared wall to the stove where there would be EMF exposure during sleep. So I think you can see with just a few small changes, you can really start reducing EMF exposure today. And then you can plan ahead and make bigger changes going forward. You don't even have to ditch all of your electronics. Instead, you can use your electronics in a more intentional way to guide you closer toward positive health and wellness.
As always, thank you so much for being here. I am so glad that you're here learning about how to create a healthier home. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel because I am here every single week with tips on how to create an indoor space that truly supports your health and your wellness.